Jon Stewart has officially gone woke. His new segment, titled The Problem with White People, is getting a lot of attention for being woke, racist. And in a segment he had with Andrew Sullivan, he called Sullivan racist, and they mocked Sullivan because he was pushing back on this idea that there is a problem with white people. Ah, how the mighty have fallen, my friends. We all remember The Daily Show with Jon Stewart, which popularized pop culture politics. And in a lot of ways, it was a good thing, and in a lot of ways, it was a bad thing. For people like me and my friends, Jon Stewart helped bring politics into the forefront because it was, well, he made it enjoyable. He made it something we cared about. And there was good in that. And there was also bad in that. Pop culture politics ultimately got really, really bad. And a lot of what Jon Stewart did was fairly tribalistic. However, I can throw it back to when Jon Stewart praised Project Veritas, and on more than one occasion, to explain why I was a fan of The Daily Show with Jon Stewart. Now, my friends, recently, Jon Stewart launched his show. It's called The Problem with Jon Stewart. Yes, there is a problem with Jon Stewart, but his show is meant to be The Problem, blank, featuring Jon Stewart, right? That's the joke. Ha 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 ha. A lot of people wondered why it was that Jon Stewart resigned from The Daily Show. And there's been much speculation. One of the bits of speculation was that Stewart, this is around the Trump era, knew he would not be able to survive a hard transition. So he hid to weather the storm and emerged after he felt it was safe. To put it simply, The Daily Show with Jon Stewart was civil libertarian. They defended and supported Project Veritas' reporting on Acorn, though he mocked, James O'Keefe for the way he dressed and made jokes. Ultimately, he was saying it was great work. Civil libertarian is where most boomers are, and most people in this country were up until the mid-2010s, when you saw the media and institutions get taken over by wokeness. I still genuinely believe most people in this country are civil libertarians. So it doesn't mean big libertarian party libertarian. It means most people are like, let's be honest, a bit pragmatic and try and sort things through. Jon Stewart, in my opinion, knew that if he stayed on his show, a hard shift was coming, and he would not be able to come out, say certain things because it wouldn't make sense for his character. Why would Jon Stewart, who praised Project Veritas and defended the rights of comedians and offensive jokes, within the span of only a few years, do a complete 180? Now, he sort of did that, but he did disappear. And a lot of people were like, he'd be forced to defend Donald Trump. But he avoided that one, right? Jon Stewart was gone throughout the Trump administration. I think only near the end of the Trump administration did he come out, start speaking and things like that. But imagine what a Jon Stewart would have looked like during a Trump administration. He wouldn't be calling out Fox News. He'd be calling out CNN. As he often did on his show, he would call out Fox News, conservative media, and other journalists as well. But he, in order to be honest, to be who he was, to maintain his core audience, he would have to do what I do. Granted, I'm not a comedian, so I don't write jokes for these bits. Sometimes I say things that people find funny, but I'm not writing any jokes. I'll just say something in exasperation and people will say they laughed at it. It's not my intention to be a comedian. Sometimes I just say things because it's frustrating or there are points to be made. But here we are. Jon Stewart used to host the funniest show on TV, and now he struggles to read propaganda off a teleprompter. So saith Chrissy Mayer. Live from January 6th, out now. Chrissy, what's that all about? Comedy special, I'd imagine. That's right. Jon Stewart ran a segment called The Problem with White People, and oh, how the mighty have fallen. Fox News reports Jon Stewart audience laughs as he appears to agree guest Andrew Sullivan is racist. Incredible. Fox News reports Jon Stewart, former Daily Show host, appeared to agree with guest Lisa Bond that British-American author and political commentator Andrew Sullivan is a racist. Charles Gallagher, Lisa Bond of Race to Dinner, and Sullivan joined Stewart to discuss how white Americans can take responsibility for upholding racist systems. Sullivan asserted that calling today white supremacy, you are minimizing actual white supremacy, asking Stewart to elaborate on the racist systems that were put in place. Now, I want to come out with some criticism for Andrew Sullivan, but only light criticism. He should not have taken the opportunity to appear on this show. I do not believe he is prepared for these arguments, and I do not believe he understands the arena he's stepping into, nor the technological limitations he placed on himself. Sullivan appeared on this show via prompter. meaning over Zoom probably, or Skype or something. This meant that he would always be in the background and could only speak when spoken to. One of the reasons we at Timcast IRL do not do digital interviews is because when you're not sitting there in front of somebody, you can't have a real conversation. And so many of these leftists try to demand digital interviews. Nah. They'll pull funny tricks. They could disconnect. It's not worth my time or energy to say we've got a show and we've got a guest and we're going to talk for 2 hours to have them swap somebody else in or pull the plug. Additionally, it makes it ridiculously easy for those in person to dominate the conversation, as they did with Andrew Sullivan. Now, my criticism for Sullivan is that his arguments were anti-CRT 101. It sounded like he didn't actually read anything about what they were going to be talking about and was ill-prepared to actually discuss the ideas with Jon Stewart. I'm a fan of Andrew Sullivan. I think he's a smart guy, but I don't think he was prepared for this, and they used him as a practice dummy to beat upon over their digital connection. That's the name of the game. Stewart said he had already explained this, but noted housing in the GI Bill by noting. Sullivan said that Stewart was living on a different planet. You know, this is what really gets me too about Sullivan's argument. Jon Stewart made a good point about systemic racism, and the problem was Andrew Sullivan just didn't understand it. The problem Jon Stewart had, in my opinion, was that he assumed if someone doesn't understand it, he must be racist. Man, it's just mind-numbingly stupid that this is the kind of garbage being produced. Okay. Jon Stewart accurately points out there are systems in place that hold remnants of racist policy. Or I should say, systems that were created during a time of legal racism have persisted today, and while the laws have changed and the core element of the racism has been removed, there still remains a taint. Housing is a good example. Jon Stewart brought it up. Redlining, blockbusting existed well into the 80s, and technically they still exist today, though people try to keep their mouths shut about it. This meant that the key mechanism by which people transfer wealth through their children, home ownership, was crippled by a racist housing market and, well, systems that were legal. These systems are now illegal, but the remnants of those systems remain. I firmly believe that it would be good if we were to try and find a way to restore the ability of marginalized communities to transfer wealth from one person to another. There's only one issue with people like Jon Stewart. It has nothing to do with white people at this point. You've already solved for that problem. The issue now is poverty. How do we solve for class issues, not race issues? But Jon Stewart, who has thrown himself behind the unrepentant racists, has no idea how to answer for this. I'd like to throw back to Chrissy Mayer, who said, Jon Stewart struggles to read propaganda off a teleprompter, and it's because he did. He quite literally struggled to read the propaganda. Let me jump forward.
Get a good picture for your clickbaits.
Here you go. Listen to this.
For however sincerely we want to reckon and listen, the truth is America has always prioritized white comfort over black survival.
False. I'll get into that in a second.
Black people have had to fight so hard for equality that they've been irreparably set back in the pursuit of equity.
Notice how he uses equity and equality to mean two different things.
And any real attempt to repair a ton of that damage, reparation.
He was struggling to read the teleprompter. I think what happened, because I've used teleprompters before when doing like hosted segments for big networks, is that the prompter wasn't rolling fast enough. And so he saw repar, and it probably had a dash, and R-E-P-A-R, depending on what comes after, will sound different, the A sound. Reparation, repair, and it looks like he thought, or I'm sorry, it's R-A, I'm not going to spell it. R-E-P-A-I-R for repair. He probably saw repa, not repar. So if he's looking at reparation, you know to say repar, but if you see R-E-P-A in a dash, you might not know it's repair. Seems like that's what may have happened with Jon Stewart. That is to say, my point is, he doesn't know what he's talking about. He's reading a prompter, And he has just signed on to Unrepentant Racism, and it's quite sad. It's quite sad. Housing. The solution, my friends, to systemic racism is not racism, as Jon Stewart would entertain. The answer is class-based. The answer is maybe, I don't know, suspending property taxes for houses under a certain value or for certain income areas. That means that while these areas are overwhelmingly black because of things like redlining, this is where they specifically said that's where black people can live, it's racist. How about they say this area is going to be an opportunity zone, property taxes will be diminished or removed entirely, and then all of a sudden people are going to want to move there. People are going to want to live there. Things will improve, and it also means that there's an opportunity for lower income people to own property and transfer that property to their children to create generational wealth. Quote, I think you are not living on the same planet most Americans are, which is why this kind of extremism, this anti-white extremism is losing popular support, Stewart said. No, Sullivan said that. Bond chimed in and said Sullivan was perpetuating racist dog tropes. I did not come on this show to sit here and argue with another white man. That's one of the reasons we don't even engage with white men. It's just absolute. It's just racist. It is. The way they try and get by the fact that this is overtly racist is by saying racism is prejudice plus power, and only white people can be racist. But at the same time, they're like Candace Owens and Larry Elder, who are black, are white supremacists. Yeah, they're full of it. Jon Stewart, grow a pair of balls, dude. Talk about sad. I remember after Occupy Wall Street, I just always wanted to see Jon Stewart's show. I always wanted to meet him and talk to him and be like, man, I love your work. And then I remember he retired and I was like, well, you know, I thought maybe one day when I was older, I'd actually be on that show. But things are really interesting. I used to wonder when I was a teenager if I'd ever be on Bill Maher, Real Time with Bill Maher. Now I've already said no to people asking me if they wanted, you know, there have been high profile people who said, let me talk to Bill's people. I'm like, never going to happen. Bill Maher is lazy. He's lazy and duplicitous. And so is Jon Stewart. Because they care more about pretending to be progressive than they do about their actual principles or beliefs, which makes me wonder if they ever had any in the first place. Bond's Race to Dinner, founded by Regina Jackson and Sarah Rao, oh great, was gathers 8 to 10 women for dinner, according to NBC. She said that every single white person upholds these systems and structures of white supremacy. She said even if they're an abolitionist or a member of the Klan, they uphold this. If I could finger snap, I would finger snap right now, Stewart said, agreeing with Bond. And then Sullivan interjected and said the finger snapping, Stewart be agreeing with Bond that he was racist. And he said, you've been doing a pretty good job with it yourself there, Stewart said. Remarkable. Jon Stewart, how absolutely pathetic. Now, Jon Stewart's influence is not what it's used to be. And the truth be told, there are many of us who are inheriting the earth, as it were. That is not to say that I or anyone else will take on the same role as people like Jon Stewart or hold the same level of clout or influence. I should say, not to myself. I certainly think Crowder. I think he's surpassed Jon Stewart. I think Stewart was getting like 1 million views on The Daily Show. Pretty sure Crowder gets more than that. My show, granted, it was like a half an hour show and they were getting 1 million views. Between my 3 hours of content, I get like almost 2 million views per day. I think it's like 1.8. It goes up and down. Obviously, during election season, ratings are a lot higher. Probably true for The Daily Show and all that. But this is where we are. And it's sad. Quote, I think it's a mistake to focus it all on this one individual, not focus it more on the idea that power is its own reward, whether it be in the financial industry or government. Power doesn't seed itself. And unless we can figure out a better way to balance out that power, we'll be vulnerable. Jon Stewart, do you know what'll happen? If you create policies based on race, you will create racist policies. Because it's only a matter of time before the way they're interpreted or implemented negatively impact someone based on race. Do you want to live in that world? Apparently you do. Then you're a racist. You racialism. Call it whatever you want. I don't want to live in a world where people are judged based on their race. That's just me. I don't know. Heard a little old message from Dr. King. Maybe y'all don't agree with that anymore. Sure. And they like to come back and they like to say, conservatives want to quote Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., blah, 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 blah. Sure, conservatives do, but I'm not a conservative, and I've never been one. Even to this day, conservatives call me a leftist. No, it's that I am a traditional liberal, a social liberal, and civil libertarian who used to agree with people like Jon Stewart. But when you lack morals, ethics, and principles, when you have no standards, it's really easy for you to abandon everything you once believed in. Isn't it, Bill or John? I've had people reach out to me and say, would you like us to try and, work Bill Maher into going on your show or whatever? I'm not saying anybody directly associated with Bill Maher's production company. But I've had high-profile people on Timcast IRL, and they were like, look, we work with, this crew or that crew. Would you like to do this? And I just say, no. I was told I should. I should absolutely do it. Maybe. I went on Joe Rogan because Joe Rogan's a good guy, because Joe Rogan's an honest guy, and Joe Rogan sometimes gets things wrong. But I've not seen Joe Rogan pull a 180 like Jon Stewart or Bill Maher. I've certainly seen Joe Rogan say things I disagree with. But Joe hasn't abandoned his core principles, the motivating ideology that drives him. Let me take you back in time. I'm going to play for you this clip. Just listen.
Well, this is an impressive expose. I would love to know the intrepid journalist who broke this story. 60 Minutes, the AP, that guy who gets the predators.
I'm just telling the whole world, you're not a pimp. You're just playing one on our show.
I'm one of the...
And you played it on those tapes.
Yeah, I'm one of the whitest guys ever.
Are you kidding me? First of all, you don't have to tell us you're a white guy. Your pimp costume appears to be a fur coat on top of your Andover uniform.
He's talking about James O'Keefe with a picture of James O'Keefe.
Where were the real reporters on this story? You know what, investigative media? Give me a camera 3. Where the hell were you? You know who broke this story? These two. You're telling me that 2 kids from the cast of High School Musical 3 can break this story with a video camera and their grandmother's chinchilla coat, and you got nothing? They did it for $3,000. That's Blitzard's monthly beard wet vac budget. It
Look at
probably
that.
cost CNN that much just to turn on their hologram machine. I'm a fake journalist, and I'm embarrassed these guys scooped me. Let's get to work, people! Of course, Fox is loving this.
So James O'Keefe, Project Veritas, receiving the praise of Jon Stewart while he mocks CNN and traditional journalists for failing to uncover acorn corruption. That was Jon Stewart. He made fun of Wolf Blitzer's beard. He made fun of James O'Keefe for wearing his pimp costume being a fur coat over his Andover uniform. See, that was real. It was real. You could make fun of everybody. And when something important happened, you said, wow, where are we today? Ah, yes, the current Daily Show. Project Veritas creates fake news to expose fake news. So saith Trevor Noah. Trevor Noah recently criticized Biden. Good for him. Of course, this wouldn't be a segment on the failures of Jon Stewart and that era if we don't highlight Stephen Colbert, who said one of the most insane things, which has resulted in him trending. When Peter Doocy of Fox News asked Joe Biden if he was going to use chemical weapons on Russia, Joe Biden refused to answer. So Colbert made fun of him, saying that he should be slapped. Colbert said Peter Doocy should be slapped for asking Joe Biden whether or not he intended to use chemical weapons on the Russians, because Joe Biden said he would. Joe Biden said if the Russians use chemical weapons, the U.S. would respond in kind. Peter Doocy says, what does that mean? And he says, it'll be a significant response. But what does that mean? And he says, I'm not telling you. So Colbert says he should be slapped. Peter Doocy was saying, are you implying the use of chemical weapons? Because that would be insane. Joe Biden wouldn't answer. Now, my assumption, the only thing I can come up with is, if Biden won't tell the world, he meant it, that the United States under Joe Biden will use chemical weapons on the Russians. Of course, there will be collateral damage. Peter Doocy was right to ask that question, but Colbert is a crackpot. You didn't think Jon Stewart was going to go that route. A lot of us didn't, because Jon Stewart appeared on Colbert's show talking about the Wuhan lab leak hypothesis theory, and he was like, it's ridiculous to deny. And even Colbert pushed back, and we were like, see, this is why Jon Stewart bailed out. Because he was civil libertarian, and we knew that he could not maintain a show based on just running lies. But apparently the price is right. Jon Stewart, after so long, probably is just bored. He's probably craving that attention. You can't give it up. You want it so bad. So here he is. You know, I've certainly entertained the idea of quitting, shutting everything down. You know, why should I keep doing my shows? People, they hate you for doing it. Some people love you for doing it. We've been swatted 7 times in the past 3 months. We've had the bomb squad forced to come here. Why should I keep doing a thing like this? Certainly, as you know, I've talked about it before. I could just maintain a small YouTube channel, do but one 10-minute segment per day, and just scrape by. Because the reality is I don't do this for money or for success or fame. I do it because I'd be terribly bored otherwise. There are things I want to talk about. There are things I want to say, and I want a place to say them. I don't want to talk to a brick wall. It's nice to be able to talk to you. So for me, you know, I wouldn't quit this simply because I like talking about stuff. I wonder if the same feeling is true for someone like Jon Stewart. The problem is, it must feel eternally painful for these people that they return to the spotlight. They talk about things they care about, and then everyone makes fun of them, and people are mean to them. And then they think, this doesn't feel good anymore. I used to make jokes and everybody laughed and they liked what I did. And so Jon Stewart says, what do I have to say to make you laugh again? And they were like, bend your knee to the cult, fillet the state. And he went, okay. Now for me, I suppose, look, we've waxed and waned in terms of viewership, and I'll just do my thing. During 2020, I was averaging about 500,000 views on an individual segment. Now it's like 200, so it's down quite a bit. I mean, the truth is people were paying attention during the election, and they're paying attention less now, so it could just be that. That's fairly, you know, that's a likelihood. We were getting close to 100,000 live viewers on Timcast IRL in 2020. Election season was big. Now we average around 40,000. It's a big show. 40,000 concurrent viewers going out to about a total viewership of maybe 700, 800,000 in the past month or so. In the winter, it was a little bit higher. It'll likely kick up again at the end of the year. I don't look at my viewership on these videos and then think to myself, I better change what I say to improve viewership. I've done segments like CNN Plus just the other day. It didn't get that many views, and I don't care. I'll talk about what I want to talk about. Talked about Chris Rock and Will Smith because it was a big story, and I really wanted to express my opinions on it. I don't care about how many people are watching. I care that I can do this, and I have a mission and a desire to call out people like Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert. These people that I believe to be genuinely duplicitous and evil. They're intent upon just saying whatever they need to say so that people clap for them. They don't actually care about what's happening in this country. They just want to be on the spotlight. I got to tell you, man, it's really awful being in the spotlight. It's genuinely awful. Anybody who claims to want it, man, I hope you get what you wished for. I hope you absolutely get all the fame and desire you want. The people who want to be famous, because I'm not going to pretend to be Brad Pitt, right? I cannot imagine not being able to go out and go shopping. But even as it stands right now, with how big Timcast IRL is getting and has been, and the rest of my show, often when I go out places, people recognize me, of course. And sometimes it sucks, especially when you're going to a city and you don't know if the reason someone's doing something is because they know who you are or don't. I'd imagine if you were Brad Pitt or some celebrity like Tom Cruise, everyone just knows who you are no matter what you do. That does not sound fun, because I've only experienced a little bit of it. I couldn't imagine experiencing to that high degree. But these people like Stewart and Colbert, you know what? Maybe they really do want it. They're desperate. They crave it. These are sick people, man. What we need is, what was that Roman emperor's name? Cincinnatus? Was that his name? I'm getting his name wrong. The guy who was a farmer became emperor for like 2 weeks and then said, I don't want to be emperor anymore. It was an emergency. They said, here's the powers. And he was like, okay, well, I'm done. You can have the powers back. I'm out. You don't get very many people like that. Colbert ain't it. Stewart ain't it. And so many of the people we looked up to have become corrupt. With smiles on their faces, they will spit on you and reject everything they once stood for. Jon Stewart calling Andrew Sullivan a racist, through implication, is not Jon Stewart. Jon Stewart was supposed to have the honest conversation that made you feel like he was authentic. Nah, he ain't there. He'll say what he needs to say. I'll leave it there, my friends. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.